Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Michael Opp, who's the founder of Opp Financial, and we'll be talking about their unique approach to portfolio diversification. Michael, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be back, Mike.
Hey, so I know that diversification is kind of a common cliche type word in financial services. So I want to definitely clarify that. But I always like to hear when someone has a unique approach to portfolio diversification. So give us a little bit of a definition of what you guys define as portfolio diversification.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the fallacies of diversification that we have run across in the industry is there is what we call true diversification and Wall Street diversification. And let me explain that to you. When I first got into the business in late 90s, 97, now our training program that I went through at Prudential Securities and some of the other firms that were out there basically told you that, hey, diversification, this is what diversification means. Diversification means that you want to get your clients in a basket of mutual funds. They want to have some large cap with growth in value. You want to have some small cap, maybe some international, again, value and growth, and then probably some good bond funds. And if you do that for your clients, that's going to smooth out the risk. And what that means, it's going to smooth out the volatility. So if one area of the market's going down, you've got other areas going up. And hey, look, I bought into that concept, hook, line, and sinker. And that's kind of how, the industry evolved. And so when that was working all great until 2000 hit. And when 2000 hit, what was supposed to happen in my mind from my training was that, hey, if some of the areas of large cap or small cap dropped, I'm going to have the other ones that are going to offset them. But that's not what happened. In fact, every asset class was dropping. And think if the whole tide dropped. And it kind of blew my mind, right? I said, wait a minute, I'm doing what's right. I'm doing what I was taught, diversification. And then to compound that, make it even worse, we were told that, just ride it out. Okay. Well, instead of making changes to portfolios and trying to adjust for the clients as these changing market crises occurred, we just, said, hey, just keep them in the market. And then it dropped again and it dropped again. And so, what I came out of this was after 2002 is that, hey, this idea of Wall Street's diversification, boy, I tell you what, that's for the birds. That does not work. And what I realized is that there's only two types of diversification. Diversification is no risk and risk, right? And so that's where we start with our clients is what we call true diversification. This money you cannot lose, okay? And we look at the asset classes, they're guaranteed, principal guaranteed, maybe your return guaranteed, and then your risk money. So that's where diversification really ought to be in clients' minds today.
It's interesting you explained it that way because I think that a lot of people might think, oh, I'm diversified because I don't have all my money in Tesla. I've got it in Tesla, Microsoft, and Apple. So I'm diversified. And I think that on a surface level, there's people that think that, oh, I'm in 10 stocks, not one. I haven't put all my eggs in one basket. But what you're explaining is Wall Street diversification, even if it's in one sector versus another, if it's in Wall Street as a broad term, you can have huge risk and volatility. So I love the true diversification. So let's talk a little bit about the basics of risk. What's kind of like an overview of the basics of risk? You touched on the Wall Street, but then how does that then tie into what you're teaching your clients regarding true diversification?
Absolutely. So when we look at true diversification, we need to have money that we absolutely, okay, what portion of that portfolio can you not lose money with? Okay. Right. That's the must money. That money that you're going to need to live on or whatever. And so we look at investments that are going to accomplish that goal. They're not going to lose money. They're going to get guaranteed rates of return. Okay. So that's that part of the diversification. Now, for the other portion that, hey, this money over here, how much of that money can you stomach 10% loss for a 20% gain? Can you stomach a 20% loss for a 40% gain? So we really need to take a look at it. How do we classify them? Then within those different categories, we determine, okay, what is the right investment to accomplish that? Because I think too many times that, we see an investor say, oh, I'm diversified. I've got mutual funds. I've got my guaranteed bonds. I got these bond funds. Oh my gosh. Do you? I mean,
Yeah.
if do you own the bonds or are you part of a bond fund? Because that money is risky because you don't own the bonds. And so you have to make sure that when you are declaring where you want your money to be, when you're saying, hey, this is no risk, make sure that that money is actually in a no risk investment. And if this money here, you say, okay, I can risk it, perfect. Then let's put it in something that's going to accomplish that goal with the least amount of fees. Or if you can find no fees, it's going to get you, the growth that you're looking for in the future. So again, it really is just what we call proper placement in identifying that. Because too many people we see, they just didn't even know. And I think that's through faulty planning or advising is what our experience is.
You just don't know what you don't know. And when they finally are told how this works, it kind of is an eye opener. So kind of leads into the next question, which is what's the importance of dynamic risk management? Because once you've identified what risk is and kind of laid out a basic plan, things can change, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is where it's very important to have annual reviews, even semi-annual reviews. Hey, life changes. Okay. Life changes for families. Life changes for individuals. Sometimes people lose jobs. Sometimes people have some sort of event where they had to spend more money, or maybe they got to go to a nursing home. And so what you have to do is, again, you need to verbalize that and communicate that with your advisor. And again, that's what we do. That's why it's important to have reviews so that we can say, okay, what has changed? Because if you stick with the same risk profile that you started, 10 years ago, but all of a sudden we have these life-changing events that have occurred, maybe cost of living, maybe, like I said, nursing home occurs, whatever it is, maybe you got to help out a child. Okay. Now we have to figure out, okay, are you in the right profile? And so we have to change those and adjust to those accordingly based on how your life changes. And again, that's why we call it dynamic risk, because sometimes we can take more risk or sometimes we have to take less risk based on your financial needs.
Yeah. And, it's like the only thing constant in life is change. So that's dynamic. Things are going to change around, and it might be changing on the equation of the client, like they got older or they had a financial need come up or whatever. It might be changing outside externally, like inflation and taxes and all that. So what do you advise your clients on how they can adapt to the change and the dynamic risks that they see out there, whether it's internally for them or externally that they can't control?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. The first thing you got to do is you say, okay, what is going on, in my life, right? Okay, so if you have some sort of, like, right now, let's take interest rates. I mean, let's take inflation, right, or taxes. Okay, if you are in a position where all of a sudden you're in a new tax bracket, okay, and you're paying more taxes on that money, and government legislation changes, right? All of a sudden, tax rates go up, and we have this, national debt that is ballooning. It's going. Most, what I would say, wise people think that tax rates are probably not coming down; they're going to go up. And so, if you are going to lose money based on potentially future tax increases, maybe it makes sense. Do we take more distributions now? Do we do pre-planning for that? Okay. Or let's say that you are in a situation where uh, you're retired and stuff, but again, everything's costing more, right? Inflation, and so that dollar is getting stretched more and more, and you're struggling to live off of that. How do we adjust that portfolio so that maybe we can get more income with it, so that we
Mhm.
can meet those needs because of the change in inflation? And so those are the things that is, as our world changes and your world changes, your financial plan and the risk management, that's got to change too.
And it's all kind of dialed into true north, meaning what is that initial, where do you want to be at retirement? What's the gap? How much money do you need? What will you have? And if all of that is kind of all focused on that end result, then any changes is not necessarily a total 180. It's just a slight pivot here, slight pivot there, all making sure that you're being fully protected.
Exactly. And I think that the big takeaway from that is constant communication, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's so important, because we can't, again, that's why we have semi-annual reviews. That's why we go over, hey, has something changed in your life? Because when you give us that information, that's going to affect the plan that you have, right? And it constantly changes. Nothing stays the same, as Mike. And so financial plans change, and so that's why you adjust them, and that's why
Yep.
you adjust the risk, and that's why we call it dynamic risk management, constantly changing.
Yep. So let's kind of wrap up with the thought here of taking all of that into consideration, the basics of risk and how it can change and you need to adapt. What are some of the basics of creating that risk management plan? So when you are sitting down, working with the client and presenting some options to them, what are you looking at for creating that plan with them?
Yeah, and again, the thing that's really interesting, again, these things are, we talked about before, they're not cookie cutter, right? It is very personalized, and so one person's tolerance for risk can be completely different than somebody else's, right? If you come in with some preconceived notion that, oh my gosh, this client's got, you know, plenty of resources, they can take on more risk, but maybe to them, they don't want to lose a dime. Maybe they're like,
Hmm.
oh, I don't want to lose anything. Or you have somebody that says, I'm a little bit more willing to take risk. And so not only you have different types of risk, you have, how much money can somebody mentally stomach? How much pain can they take in terms of losing money? And it's not a one size fits all. So there's such a litany of questions that we ask. Okay, how do you feel? How would that affect you? I don't want my clients stressed out, even though I might have a preconceived notion that, oh, you know what? They can take more risk. But if they're stewing at night and they're worried about their money, we don't want that. We don't want that. We want you to live again, a carefree, sleep at night type of life. And so it comes down a lot of times too is, you know, yes, we look at the financials. How much can you risk? How much can you afford? And then we also, again, that's where the personalness comes out, is that, well, maybe this person is okay if they have more fluctuation, or maybe they're not. So, that's where we start. And then from there, we build into the different tools and investments that are going to satisfy that client's risk profile and and we show them how we get them there.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing for people to keep in mind is you said we'll show them how to get there, not we're going to tell them what they will do no matter what, no matter how they feel, and we're going to fit a square peg in a round hole. You're the guide. You're bringing up things that fit in with what you feel is good for the client. You're explaining what the risk is. You're that fiduciary. You're the independent that has all kinds of fresh and a lot of options. But mainly, you're just kind of laying it out like a waiter shows a menu and says, well, here's my recommendation. And you're letting them choose, but yet you're giving them that guidance.
Exactly. I mean, I think the big thing is that, you have to leave your preconceived notions to the side because every person is different, right? And where you think somebody might be going, all of a sudden you're really, oh, no, they don't want any risk. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we just lay it out. What do you want? And which we will customize it based on what the client wants to accomplish and what they feel that they mentally, can is most appropriate for that. And so again, that's a great point. It's just we're here to show you your options, and then we'll build a customized financial plan through our financial institutions. That's going to
and I think too, Michael, when you were saying, how much risk can you tolerate? One person might say a moderate amount of risk, and another person might say a moderate amount of risk, but that number, that percentage might be completely different. So what one person says they could tolerate could be totally different. So again, it just gets down to what is that good amount of diversification. So I think if someone is listening to this going, I might want to at least clarify what true diversification is versus Wall Street and see what a good risk management plan is for me. If they're interested in learning more about this and also reaching out and connecting with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they want to see what true diversification and what a plan would look like, feel free to call us direct. We can be reached at 720-989-4295. Call us there and we'll just have a brief conversation and so, hey, what does this look like? And what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to see happen with your life? Or you can reach out to us, send us an email, Michael at Op Financial. But, either way, just, feel free to reach out. And if you've got concerns, you've got questions, or maybe you just want a second opinion, how you're not feeling comfortable with your plan. I think it comes down to just asking the right questions.
Yeah.
For your clients.
100%. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming back on. It's been a real pleasure talking with you today.
Yep. My pleasure. Glad to be here, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.